So thank you all for tuning in to basically hear about my journey and then maybe even offer me some advice or comments afterwards. As Clark said, my name is Brandy Ramaj Jewett, and I am an AT in Southern Indiana, Washington, Indiana. And, Clark has invited me to kind of share my journey of starting my own business. I think it's very, I feel honored that he's asked me because of the speakers before me have kind of been pioneers and some of them really successful veterans in athletic training. So I feel very honored to be here presenting to you guys today. And if you have any questions along the way, just wave on your screen or push that little wave icon and let me know. I'm always fascinated with how multiple perspectives can shape our practice, and I encourage feedback and questions. So a little background on me. My first employer was a local hospital where I was a clinical assistant to a chiropractor who had recently joined the hospital when I was hired. And I was also tasked at the time with being the first athletic trainer for a local high school. So I kind of had a dual setting of clinic and secondary school. My first job was pretty challenging, but it was exciting at the same time. My first year with the school, it required a lot of educating others, and educating myself, learning from them. It required a lot of open-mindedness, patience, trust building, and then a little bit more patience, really. And I had to be an advocate for myself and my skill set, and that I was a valuable component to what they already had going on. So looking back when I was preparing this presentation, I would say that empathy and really putting myself in their shoes is really what pushed me the farthest and what was most valuable for me. And basically helping me describe to them how I could help them and how I could fit into what they were already doing. Sometimes it was frustrating to have a soul full of service to give, but little respect or knowledge of the value I can bring coming from them. So, if I was going to be successful there, I had to figure out what mattered to each of the stakeholders at the school and then decide how I fit into their stories, into their values. So now I think that this is something that most athletic trainers do. Like, that's not something that's new for a lot of us. I mean, really think about it. Not only do we have to juggle what our school's needs and values are, but if we're employed, we have to do it within the parameters of our employers. And in my case, it was the hospital's needs and what their values are. So basically what I realize now is that all of this was a concept of business management. And now that I'm, managing my own business, I think it's pretty cool. There's pretty cool parallels with it. So anyways, I practiced in a dual role for a few years. And then when the chiropractor I was working with decided to leave the hospital to start a private clinic, he asked me to come along and provide rehabilitation services. So I felt like this was a good direction for my career with more opportunity for professional growth. So I followed him. I helped him set up the operations facilities of the private practice. And we started up fully in April of 2019. And at that time, I had all sorts of ideas. Everything was new and I was getting excited. I knew I had a lot to give to my community. I had a drive to use what I had learned, but also to pursue the freedom to serve how I wanted to serve. So transitioning to a new employer, I did miss out on the secondary school. So I was no longer at the secondary school when I made this transition, and I missed the kids. I miss making the difference that I felt that I was able to make with them, but I love my work clinically with the adults in the clinic. So it was kind of a bittersweet transition for me at the time. But I helped patients navigate insurance. That was a big thing I gained through that experience. And I became their partner in figuring out, how to get them out of pain. I also had what I describe as an uncurable urge to dive into the industrial and the public safety sectors within my community. I saw problems in how their work-related care was being managed, and I felt like I at least had some ideas for solutions that could improve things for the individual employees. So all this was kind of itching at me. I had all these thoughts, these passions, and these ideas flying around my brain. And as I moved into this new clinic, I really thought that I was certain that this clinic could be a platform for me to pursue these career interests. But then COVID hit, right? Like that hit all of us and kind of like a brick wall. And 2020 was rough. It caused a lot of changes for many of us. And as the economic effects of the pandemic kept unfolding, I, as many athletic trainers, was worried about the stability of my job at the time. the clinic began to struggle when we closed down in March of 2020. And I love the work that I was doing clinically, but at the end of the day, if my employer isn't making enough to pay me, then I won't have a job. So in my community, the other employment option really was going back to the community hospital. And I'd been employed there before, and I kind of felt drained. I didn't feel like that was an employer that could provide me the platform that I wanted for my career. So anywho, I felt stagnant there. I didn't feel like I had room to grow professionally. I didn't want to go back to that. I just kind of felt defeated. Like, what else am I going to do? So that's when my husband, who I promise you has more faith in my abilities than anyone else on this planet, reminded me that I already know what I wanted to do professionally. Like, I'd been talking about it as we set up this private clinic. And he basically just told me, go do it. And I was like, is it really that easy? So the thought of that sounded exciting and terrifying. But, my husband argued that the stress of setting up a new business couldn't be near as bad as the stress of me having an unstable job or going back to work in an environment that I felt didn't give my passions room to grow. So I knew he was right, but the idea of starting my own thing, it really kind of sounded distantly foreign. Kind of like Narnia, like, yeah, I might be pretty cool, but is it actually real? Probably not. So anywho, around that time that I was panicking about my job, my hours were cut in half, things were looking grim. That same secondary school that I had served in the beginning of my career actually decided to end their contract with the local hospital when their former athletic trainer left. And they reached out to me looking for an athletic trainer. And I'm like, yeah, like what a God thing. So then literally 3 days after that, an HR manager from a local manufacturing company actually asked me if I could give her some advice about her own back pain. So I saw her in my home, and she mentioned that her company was having a lot of injuries lately on a specific portion of the manufacturing line. So in casual conversation, we talked about different ways that line could be improved. The conversation then basically grew to me offering to come out there and tour the plant. And then maybe I could offer some different suggestions. So she asked if I could come out the next day. I was like, wow, yes, I guess I will. So of course I played it a lot cooler than that. But man, if that wasn't just another push, firing up my passions for all of this, then I don't know what better could have been that. But after I toured the plant, I then offered to have a meeting with the rest of the HR and some corporate individuals about maybe setting up a contract with me to come in and do injury prevention programming, simple treatments, and basically anything to help reduce injury rates and associated costs. So I basically walked out of that plant on fire. Like, I was like, holy cow, that just happened. What have I done? I have no idea what I'm doing. What the heck's going on here? But basically, I signed on with the secondary school for a year. That very next week, just in time for first fish football practice. Then I was officially let go from the clinic shortly after, and I signed a 3-month trial with a manufacturing company the following week. So that was a big couple of weeks. And I remember looking back on that and been like, okay, so we're doing this. This is happening. So meanwhile, Mr. Clark Simpson had been helping me set up a third-party reimbursement procedures for the private clinic. And through COVID, through the beginning of COVID, we hadn't really spoke much, but he conveniently checked in with me around August when things started to take big changes for me. And I caught him up on all of the new developments that had been going on, all of the ideas, and he basically dove right in beside me with all of it. I felt like, and I recognized I had a lot of gaps in my knowledge to truly be successful with my new business. And Clark was able to not only assist me himself, but then connect me with everything I needed. So, and on top of that, maybe even most importantly, Clark provided me with encouragement, and he fueled my confidence. And I'm not standing here, trying to be a billboard for Clark Simpson, but huge help. The resources are there is really what I'm pointing towards here. But he made me realize that I've been practicing business concepts for my entire career thus far, and I just didn't realize it. All of the challenges I had faced with the secondary school and balancing the values of the school and my employer, they were actually really cultivating business practices and skills that I am now equipped with. So that was pretty an eye-opening conversation. And Clark, you can correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure we chatted for about 2 hours, me going back and forth about all of this. But just his experience and his wealth of advice that he could offer was incredibly helpful. His network of contacts has been instrumental as well. And if he didn't know the answer or best practice for something that came up with my business, he knew someone that had the answer and was willing to help me. So again, Clark, I know I thank you all the time, but I can't thank you enough for that. And again, the point I'm bringing, or the reason I'm bringing all of this up is I had the baseline. I realized I had the baseline of knowledge to grow from, and I had the resources to me. And as I'll reiterate several times throughout this presentation, it was all about taking the resources and committing to what I decided to do. But basically all of that led to JSOH being officially founded in September of 2020 with 3 major branches at its inception. So I've got the occupational health and industrial side of JSOH, and I had one contract with a 3-month trial when I officially got my DBA in September. And then I had serving contracted sports medicine contracts, and I had that one secondary school for a year. And then I set up a cash-based clinic actually out of a room in my home, and I was serving about 3 to 4 patients per week. So even though I felt like I was treading water while chasing my big ideas, I did realize that talking with Clark that I had the resources that I need to help me through it. And it really just took action from me at that point. So preparation, getting things going. What I consider the dirty work of all of this is, the most important product of my journey so far has definitely been the development of my business plan. And I know this has been a common theme throughout our monthly meetings, is talking about that business plan. It sounds intimidating. And it did sound intimidating for me too, but it was really something that I just had to dive into. I needed operational answers, and I needed to get a grip on what I needed to do and how I needed to do it. I knew my ideas, I knew the end goal, I knew my vision, but the business plan really helped me dig my heels in and figure out how I was going to do it. I also interviewed professionals in occupational health and public safety in private practice, basically just to gain information on how they document and demonstrate value in these settings, how they're doing things and what's been successful for them. I really want JSOH to work, but only if I am truly providing a valuable service. That's really important to me. I use the information from these interviews combined with a lot of the documents that NATA has up and position statements related to, the documentation, value demonstration. And then I basically formed my own policies and procedures with my own little twist or nuances to fit my business. I also completed the OSHA 30-hour certification to better understand what safety teams are expected to do per federal law. That certification has really proven valuable when meeting with safety managers. There is a whole list of do's and don'ts in the safety world, and demonstrating that I understand the nuances of the setting shows to safety teams that I'm not a threat. And it helps me be creative in discussing a service line that really fits into their current operations. And again, that's a direct parallel from what I experienced my first year at the secondary school as well. I really approached that very similarly. So then, using what I learned about OSHA, I was able to then create a policies and procedures manual related to prevention programming and how JSOH was going to manage workplace injuries through the lens of OSHA. This is similar to, emergency action planning that we might do with our high schools, right? We all have like the skeleton of the procedures that we want to do, but it has to fit into the school's resources and the school's normal operations. So really, I put this list, and there's the industrial ergonomic evaluator certification up there as well, but I put this list of accomplishments or things that I've completed, not to list out my resume for you guys, that would be boring, but I'm really trying to demonstrate that there are resources there, meaning that if you want to do something different with your career, you just have to be willing to seek out the resources that you need and then commit to following through. I've talked to several athletic trainers who have been doing the things that I want to do. They're there already, and I'm trying to build there. So I'm just talking to them. I ask them, what did you do to get where you are now? And what do you advise that I do? Like, is there something that you see that I'm going down a rabbit trail and it's not going to be successful and you've got experience? I want to know that. And I think most importantly, I followed their advice through the lens of JSO and through the lens of my community. If you decide to not pursue whatever big ideas that you have for your career, it's not because you don't have the resources. It's really not. They're there. I hope, I know I keep saying that over and over again, but I really hope that is one concept that really sticks with everyone. You have the tools. There are professionals in our field willing to give advice, and you really just have to follow it. So since September, JSO is now an LLC. I have a 3-year contract with the secondary school now, and I have added an additional smaller contract with another secondary school in Washington. And then I now have 2 occupational clients, and my clinic has now grown from the 3 to 5 patients a week to about 15 to 20 per week. So even as those sentences come out of my mouth, I barely believe it. Like, it's been super cool to see how everything has continued to play out for me. So gosh, what have I learned? This is definitely the wordiest slide for good reasons. I have learned a lot. A big take home for me is I learned I have a lot to learn, but my business might actually work. Step 1, business plan is a must. That document is exactly as it sounds. It is a plan for your business. It's typically something that is supposed to be created before you go live with your business. But, in my case, I wrote the plan while eyes deep in my business operations. But putting together the plan definitely made me think about operational aspects of my business that I really wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Ideas are great, but sustainability is really created by the operations of your business. So again, like early on, I recognized that I had great ideas, but I also recognized and admitted that I had gaps in knowledge operationally. And once I solidified the vision of my business, I reached out to Clark. He was my resource. He was my trail guide through my business journey. And I wasn't afraid to admit that I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't afraid to admit when I needed to learn something new. And he connected me with other athletic trainers who are doing similar operational things in their own business. I interviewed them. I got a sense of what they have done in the past and what they're doing now and how they would do things differently if given a chance. And I took that information and I weaved what I learned from others into my operations and into my business plan. And the deeper I got into the development of my business, the more excited and energized I felt about it all. Guys, like, this might actually work. I said that all the time. And I know that I've got some classmates from Moravian on here, and they're probably the ones that have heard me talk about JSO the most. I'm sorry if I've overused that phrase, but it has been super cool watching all of this. But yeah, I had help developing my clear vision. I got my hands dirty. I committed myself. And then I added a pinch more confidence that I had. But basically, at the end of it all, I took control of my career to pursue the type of clinical work that I want for me and my family, instead of waiting for an employer to give me that platform. I think for the first part of my career, especially when I moved to that private clinic, I got so excited because I had all of these things and I thought that he was going to provide it for me rather than me pursuing it myself. So that super cool. I also, along the way, I recognized that my community is a huge component of my success. My position at the secondary school has truly unlocked opportunities for conversation about the other 2 aspects of my business. I soon realized that basically the same marketing strategy that hospital systems use with athletic trainers was just organically working for me. I marketed the occupational aspect of JSO by treating my athletes and their families well. Talking about it is great. Presenting evidence about occupational athletic training is great. But just demonstrating my skills, my empathy, a willingness to become truly a part of something rather than, just a side service or a transaction, and showing my commitment to my craft, it's really carried me so much farther. So, lastly, I stay passionate about what I'm doing, and I hope you guys see that through this presentation. I say I am a big nerdy sponge, soaking up basically everything I can from others in athletic training. And I'm always looking for gaps in my community and deciding if that gap is something that JSOH can help fill. I'm not interested in really in competing for clients or for individuals who already have access to the care that they need. I have found that JSOH is most valuable in reaching individuals and groups who need what I have to offer. And sometimes that has required adaptability and creativity and listening to others. But most importantly, listening to what others say they need rather than me coming forth in the beginning and telling them what I think they need. So yeah, I work together with my clients and my patients to see what they have, what they need. And we really, I've said this several times, like we make the coolest freaking lemonade ever when we come together and we do it together. And it's been super cool. So next steps. Originally, I had no intentions of growing more than what supplied me with a sustainable income. I just wanted to pay my bills. I wanted to provide a meaningful service to my community. But now I have seen so much potential, and the feedback from what I am doing has given me confidence to grow. And like I said, this might actually work. So I think I can grow. Growth will definitely require working with other clinicians. I am one person, as many of you are probably thinking, like, how are you doing all of these things at once? I don't have a lot of downtime. So I would, I have brought on 3 subcontractors now that are helping me with the sports medicine side. But I do see myself working with other clinicians moving forward. I prefer AT just because my policies and procedures and compliance rules are all written for the Athletic Training State Practice Act. But, my biggest concern is finding the right personalities and the skills regardless of the certification or license. I also am really passionate about showing other athletic trainers that our license enables us to unlock all sorts of opportunities for our careers. I am 1 AT in 3, almost 4 different practice settings. It's possible, people. Like, I'd love to help expose students to things that I wasn't exposed to while I was in school. So many local athletic training students that are AT undergrad and they're going on to PT school because they don't think that they will find a job in our area as just an athletic trainer. So since so many programs have also discontinued the undergrad program, less and less students that I speak to from my community are planning to go through athletic training. I've had high school students say they thought about AT, but there aren't any jobs for them, and everyone's looking to be a PT. So I hope by growing JSOH, I can inspire other athletic trainers to be more creative with what they're doing with their career. And realize that there are some great opportunities right here in Daviess County for just an athletic trainer. I think we are so much more than that box that I think we put ourselves in sometimes. So in summary, that was a lot, so much, but at the end of the day, if you are clear on what you want in your career to look like, create a solid vision. You have to know your end goal objective. After that, you can create the operations that lead you to that objective. That is your business plan. And it was tedious. It was a lot of work, but the development of my business plan, I like to think of it as kind of like tilling your garden, deciding what plants you want to grow, the purpose of those plants, and then how you will set forth the best environment for that crop to be fruitful. That is essentially your business plan. Business seems like uncharted waters for ATs. But we are taught to be adaptive. We're taught to be creative, empathetic, resilient, and to practice with integrity and collaboration. So, all of those attributes are valuable traits of an entrepreneur. In the scholastic setting, you are already a leader. You take control of daily operations. You keep it all going. People rely on you to keep operations going. I mean, for some of you in the athletics setting, think about what would happen in your AT clinic if one day you just decided not to show up for a week without notice. Like, you are the epicenter of those operations, yet many ATs are unable to unlock the career setup that they desire. So, before you know it, burnout comes on and it's inevitable. So, I would argue that high school, college athletic trainers are already an entrepreneur in the way that they think. And I think that is why we're already seeing so many ATs across the nation taking control of the course of their careers and starting their own business. So, you can do it. Furthermore, I've listed some variables that I see as important to my success. Humility. I recognized early on that I couldn't do this by myself. I didn't have experience doing many of the things that I'm doing now, but I wasn't afraid to reach out for help. And I acknowledged my weaknesses early and decided to get better by connecting with trustworthy people who are content experts. So, my support group at home is incredibly valuable. I am honest with my friends and my family about my struggles, about the battles, the successes, and the wins. And their support and encouragement really pulls me through the no's and the slam doors, and it keeps me going. And that's an aspect of business development I don't necessarily hear being discussed very often. It is hard, and you do have to have the support of other people. And most of us have that. So my biggest battle, though, is definitely myself. Working with Clark and forcing myself through some of the things in the beginning has helped me tremendously in battling what, we're all terming now imposter syndrome. Even though I discovered that I have a lot more to learn, I always realize that I am good enough. I am savvy in the business world. I am empathetic to my clients and my patients' needs and values. And I really try to be transparent and genuine in that. I have a lot of great clinical skills too, and I have learned that I can still be confident in those skills and practice humility. So at the end of the day, I truly want to help people feel better, and I want to let people see that as well. So if you are thinking about starting a business and you are scared of those uncharted waters, get a hold of me, get a hold of Clark, find someone else in the field doing something similar to the service line that you want to provide to your community. You have all the resources you need. You just have to be willing to seek them out. I had, and I still have a lot that's working against me in all of my goals, but I cast those doubts aside and I really focused on my purpose and then the vision that I have on my career. So thank you guys. That's me. Any questions?
Brandy, great job. Very concise in what you did. There are a couple of, if you're looking at the chat box, so there are a couple of questions that came up.
Oh, you never told me.
Yep, go ahead and look at the chat box, and I know that the Ryan's kicked out a couple of questions you could look at and maybe respond to.
How feasible is it for a new grad to try and start up a private business like you have? I don't know. I think, again, it goes back to, so how feasible is it for a new grad to try and start up a private business like you have? There were definitely some things that I, again, cultivated in myself, some skills that I cultivated in myself. Clinical confidence is an important one. But if you've got the right resources behind you, I think you could do it. Like if I had the confidence and I was connected with Clark or someone, similar in the field back then when I first started, I had the ideas and I think I just needed the encouragement and to pursue the resources. I just didn't know they were there. I think that even right when I was thinking about leaving the private clinic, when I didn't know that all these resources were here until we had that one conversation with Clark. So I think the association has done a good job, and other professionals in our field have done a good job of putting these resources together. Maybe we just need to help reach new grads so they know that, if you've got a new grad that wants to get into private practice, they need to know that these resources are there. So, and I guess that kind of answers the IATA question. What can IATA do to help grow professionals such as myself realize the potential they have? Getting the word out there that these are here, doing things like these meetings have been great for me. I know that I have somehow secured a guest speaker spot, but I have learned a lot from these speakers. So resources are here. We just need to let people know. Biggest challenge so far, doubting myself 100%. That is definitely my biggest challenge. And what I would do differently, and I would have left the private clinic a lot quicker. I would have pursued my ideas a lot sooner. And that would have been pre-COVID. right? When I saw things changing with the chiropractor I was working for, and I had all these ideas, I shouldn't have relied on somebody else to create my dream job. I shouldn't have relied on finding somebody else to create a platform for me to work the way I wanted to. And I should have just dove in deeper. I should have called Clark about setting up my own business instead of helping me with third-party reimbursement at that clinic. That's the biggest thing I should have done differently.
Hey, Brandy, if you want to stop the share on yours, if you want to pull that off and we can kind of bring it back to, there we go. And so to the group that's on here, open for questions. It's really meant at this point in time to, if you've got questions or comments or anything like that, this is an open discussion. So please join in.
Yeah, give me advice. I'm open to it. Oh, the email question. Okay, so when setting up your business initially, do all the emails go through Gmail account? I set up my Gmail account. I know I've talked to Stephanie about this before. I hate the email I set up, but now I'm stuck with it because that's kind of what everybody knows me as. I did use a Gmail account. I guess, Kim, the biggest advice that I would give, I didn't want to pay for the domain right away. But if you don't want to pay for the domain in the beginning, what I recommend is get a better name than mine. Like mine is Jewett.SOH, and it should have just been JSO Health to match my website. So my website's jsohealth.com, and I wish I would have done my email like jsohealth@gmail.com or something similar. But I mean, if you're serious about it, and I know that you are, Kim, I would just get the domain. What do you think, Clark?
No, I would agree. I mean, if it's not that costly to get a domain and et cetera. And so if you know the name that you want to get, that's actually what Clark Group Associates, I got the domain. And so my, my email is, tcga.biz, and it goes through my domain.
Yeah, that's what I recommend doing. I should have done that before. And now I'm kind of in a tight spot because I've got my email plastered everywhere and I want to change it now, but I've got it on everything and we can link it. And I know there's things that I can do, but I just haven't taken the time to do it.
So Brandy, Ryan's got another question there for you.
Yes. So I have an accountant that does almost everything for me on that side of things, like as far as handling my taxes, filing for me, and that kind of stuff. I recently have my grandma helping me with all of my business budgeting and sending my invoices out and making sure my invoices are paid, because that was really hard to handle and remember. I was providing all these contracted services, but wouldn't remember to send the invoice for them to pay me. And at least my occupational side, they will not pay you if you don't send an invoice. So that's a very important thing to have accomplished. So I do have my grandma helping me, and that's what she did for her whole life before she retired. So she's doing that kind of stuff, managing the day-to-day accounting tasks. And she'll tell me like, I wanted to get more rock tape. And I go, hey, grandma, I want more rock tape. And she's like, well, you've got this amount of money that you can spend on it. You're not spending more than that. And so I like having that because it keeps me in check, but it helps me keep the personal budget, our household, separate from the business. That was getting really hard to do, and I was missing things. So I don't know. I would encourage people to start up maybe on your own. I don't know. What do you got, Clark?
So everybody may not have a grandma like Brandy that does that. If you do, that's great. But if you don't, I think the key to that is to be able to have someone that can kind of handle the administrative office type of things.
Yeah, I did okay until I added on my third contract, and it got hard because every company pays a little different timeline, and it's good to have help.
Other questions, guys, comments? This is really, we'd like to have a discussion with this. So what are you guys thinking? Is anybody thinking about doing this? And I know that there's someone here that are. Kim, Stephanie, jump in here.
I'm just going to unmute if that's okay. And it's probably easier to have a discussion out from behind the keyboard. But Brandy, you and I have talked on the phone. I'm working with Clark also. Where I am at with my establishing my own business is I am in need of a space to work out of. And I have a space that I've been using that's okay, but certainly not ideal. And I need to relocate. And if I'm really honest, I'm part of my hesitancy in marketing this thing full steam is I don't love the space that I'm in. If I had a space of that I was either sharing with, it was a better atmosphere and environment, even if I was sharing the space with another business, I would be more than happy to, drag people through my door. So that is where I'm at. I don't know if anybody else is in the process of shopping for a location, whether it's a lease, a sublease. And I'm in California, which makes things a little pricier. And I'm the other, we'll say, factor or parameter is that we don't have licensure in California. So there's nothing that says what I can do, but there's nothing that says what I can't. So that's sort of the spot that I'm in, and I'd be interested in hearing anybody else's experience with locating commercial property to work out of.
I wish I had something for you, Stacy, but I don't.
I know I need your grandma and I need your house is what I need.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, I'm not in love with my space either, but it's been working out.
Yeah.
What is it about the space you're in right now that you don't like, or that, doesn't work?
Yeah, so my practice is concussion rehab, and the space that I'm using is within the same building as a CrossFit style gym. You don't actually have to walk through the gym, but it's just across the hall. So for some of my more acute patients, hearing the thumping music and the crashing weights and the booyah is pretty intimidating, and creates problems for those that are highly anxious or having sound sensitivities. The other thing too is it's an intimidating environment. There's lots of half-naked, sweaty people walking around. And for the little teenage girl that I'm seeing right now, if she wasn't with her mom, I'm not sure she'd ever step foot in the building. The space I'm actually able to work out of, they've done the best they can to make it as soundproof as possible, but you can still hear it. A client of the gal that I share space with, in the middle of their consultation, made a comment that it was Ozzy Osbourne that was playing in the middle of their consultation, and that's not the kind of the professional image that I'm interested in sharing with my concussion patients.
Sure, understand.
Nothing against Ozzy Osbourne, but I don't think it's the right environment.
Hey, Brandy, this is Ryan. I got another question that just kind of came to mind. You're obviously in a lot of different settings. So occupational, secondary school, private clinic. Am I missing anything?
I'm currently pursuing public safety, but I haven't had a bite yet.
What is your goal? I mean, that can spread you really thin. Again, for someone that's trying to, right now you're trying to grow the business either way, but would your goal be to focus more on one or two of those areas, or what? What are your thoughts on that?
I am asked that a lot, Ryan. I don't know. I am one that's always been anxious with shut doors. So I don't close doors. My immediate answer to that is I want JSOH to continue serving all of those, especially like in my community. And that means I just have to bring on more team members. That's how I would address that. My vision for JSOH is to improve the quality of life of individuals that I interact with. So, we've all heard enough about the industrial setting to know how we can improve quality of life in that realm. We know with public safety how we can improve their quality of life. We've demonstrated it in the literature already with secondary schools. And in a lot of my private clinic patients I get, they are patients that have literally been everywhere else and they're still in pain. And that's why they decide to try out the little clinic inside of a living room on 701 Central Avenue. That's why they're in my door, because they've tried everything else. And in a lot of ways with the private clinic, I didn't expect to like that out of my home. I didn't. But I really feel like I've made differences in people's lives there, because I already know what they've already had done and what didn't work. And so I can kind of dive in a little bit deeper and dig my heels in and figure out what's helping them. And I think maybe that's what I've realized I like about growing a business is it is new and I'm creating. So I don't know, Ryan. I don't know. Right now, I don't have a specific area that I want to grow more into. I would love to see JSOH continue to serve all of them, but not by myself. I am all about bringing in more people.
Yeah, well, that actually, let me do another question I want to ask. If you said you have some people doing subcontracting for you,
Mhm.
How does that work?
So basically they just have a subcontract with or a contract with JSOH to provide coverage for the secondary school. I don't have anybody for occupational stuff yet. So they work as a contractor just as I work as a contractor, only they contract to me. So we actually, and this was my preference. It was kind of Clark's idea, but it's my preference to do this. Is that every subcontractor I bring on, we have a Zoom meeting. It's with me and Clark, and we go through every point of the contract with me. These are younger professionals in athletic training, and I didn't get any of the content on a contract. I didn't know what looking at a contract meant when I was in school. So I wanted to make sure that everything was full disclosure and that they understood the terms of the contract. I think the biggest things that are different for them is they invoice me for payment. So at the end of the month, they'll tell me how many hours they worked and they'll say this is what they expect to make. And we were just very clear that that's how that would work when we had our meeting with Clark. And the feedback from them so far has been that they really enjoyed having that meeting. And it's kind of given them even skills and empowered them moving forward whenever a future employer or anybody else gives them just an employment contract or any contract. They can understand the language a little bit better. And we have had 2 separate meetings with Clark, and I've learned something new from each one of those. So that was the one thing I was intentional with the subcontractors, is that we would all be clear on what that contract meant for them and what it meant for me.
So they just work for you as a 1099 independent contractor? They're not technically an employee of JSOH?
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
okay. Just curious. Thank you.
Yeah. We had another question in the chat too. Do
Hey,
you feel-
Brandy, before you jump into that, and let me jump on to Ryan's. And the other thing with the subcontractor, the type of professional liability insurance that Brandy has, and with JSOH, that those subcontractors, their professional liability is protected underneath JSOH. So they don't have to go out and get their own professional liability when they're working for JSOH, which was kind of big for them. They didn't want to go spend some extra dollars. And so at any rate, those subcontractors, when they're working for JSOH under contract, their professional liability is protected under JSOH and the professional liability that JSOH has. And that is, and just to let you guys know, that's Mercer. So the NATA professional liability preferred provider, that is who the insurance is through Mercer.
Yeah.
Sorry, jump in.
No, you're fine. So yeah, Joe's question: do you feel pursuing the DAT further helped you in being creative or exposed to resources toward helping you start your business? 100%. Yes. I know I've got some Moravian classmates on here. One of the coolest thing that I was able to do with my DAT program is one of the self-studies. It's you create your own your own class basically, and it's 16 weeks. And I chose to develop my business as part of that class. So that was something I formally set to make my business plan with. Clark was my mentor. Moravian has you pick a mentor for each self-study class that you do. So that was huge. That's really what helped me stay on track to build my policies and procedures manual. All of those other things that I said I accomplished on that big, like long, boring list slide, all of those things were part of my self-study class that I did. So that was super cool. But yeah, Joe, there's all kinds of different things in every class that has been directly woven to JSOH. I think something that's cool about Moravian's DAT and a lot of the programs, DAT programs, is it's built around what you're practicing clinically. So you can, at least in Moravian, I know you can choose whatever class that you want to fit what you were doing clinically. So yes, Joseph, that was a good question. It definitely has. I don't think you need that though, to be clear. I think there are plenty of people that could have done it without the DAT. This definitely shot me forward quickly. Like I was able to grow really quickly because I had all of these resources.
Other questions, either put them up or jump in. Comments from anybody? Brandy, have you got served your meal while we've been talking here yet?
Do what?
Have you gotten served your meal yet while we're sitting here talking?
Yeah, I've actually already eaten. I just ordered it so I could use the Wi-Fi in this space.
Oh, yeah.
I'll probably feed it to my husband later.
Ryan, so those of you that may not know, Ryan Galloy is the COPA chair for the IATA. Ryan, do you want to, say anything about the COPA committee and things that you guys are doing?
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, this is, and working with Clark, this is part of what he's doing with his role with IATA business development. And I guess one thing I'd say also to everybody who's on, whether you're in Indiana or not, one thing in talking with some of our committee members about these meetings too is, and if you're talking to other people, sometimes when we see as athletic trainers, it says business strategies, we think, oh man, that has nothing to do with what I do. I work at a college, I work at a high school, whatever. But in the end, this is all strategies like Brandy has kind of said, and Brandy and I have both echoed this. These are all strategies for how we can advance as athletic trainers. I mean, there was a time where this was not, what Brandy's doing was not even thought of. I mean, I've been in this over 20 years and it was nowhere near, or there was nobody near what Brandy's doing in any way, shape, or form. So kudos to her and other people that are looking into this, including myself. I'm trying to look into maybe doing some stuff as well. But in terms of practice advancement in our state, one thing, it's the main reason why I'm on here as the COPA chair, but trying to look for ways we can move forward as a profession. And it's with, people's ideas like Brandy's, like Amber Kivett, like some other people we've had on here. So one of the things we are trying to do also, just to throw this out there, hopefully at some point, me and Scott Sell as our IATA communications chair working on some public awareness of our profession in the state, trying to get some streaming and TV streaming commercials going. Actually, is probably the biggest thing we want to do, as we've heard from the membership. We all want to make sure, and I've realized this now, being at a high school the last couple of years, after almost 20 years in the collegiate setting, we need to get the public still more educated on what we do, on the fact that there are people like Brandy doing what she does. There are people like me in a high school and in a college, and exactly what we do and why we do it. But we also want to energize our membership. So that's one of the big things. Hopefully we're talking to a few stations about getting something out there to just kind of increase awareness, and hopefully that can drive, whether it's parents, athletes, to, whether it's our website or to talking with their school administrators to try and improve, athletic training coverage, create jobs, all those things. It's baby steps. But other than that, the COPA committee's got a lot of ideas to try to work on how we can improve our profession for us as athletic trainers, and certainly for the services we can provide. So it's, like I said, people like Brandy and Scott Sell, also on this call, and I'm sure a lot of you all have great ideas. So don't hesitate to reach out to your COPA committee. It's got on the IATA website, we do have our emails on there. We're working on revamping that as well. If you just got ideas on ways we can better what we do and how we do it, and certainly getting recognized for it. From anything from things like this to third-party reimbursement and so forth. So yeah, lot of good ideas, a lot of things trying to get done.
Yeah, Ryan,
Thanks,
thank
Ryan.
you. Yeah, thank you. And Clark, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in real quick as well.
I was going to ask you to. We have the
Yeah.
president of the IATA, Justin Miller. So
Yeah. So thank you. So first of all, Brandy, thank you for your presentation. I tell you, I've listened to you a couple of times now, and I just get more and more impressed with what you've been able to do. I think you're an absolute inspiration to any of those individuals that want to start a new business. Certainly the younger ATs, but even the older ATs who just want to start something new and different. So I'm really hoping that once we get the link of this presentation put on the website, that we can drive more and more people to it. Because I think your presentation, how you spoke, how you went about presenting that information, again, is a great starting block for just anybody to kind of get an idea of what to do. So very proud of you for what you've done. I'll jump a little bit onto Ryan's comments. Also excited about COPA. I think one of the biggest struggles for COPA anywhere, and I have felt this way for several years in this profession, that to Ryan's point, having to educate the public on what we do as athletic trainers, one of the most difficult reasons or why we have so many difficulties with educating is we are so diverse. So we're talking about certainly the traditional settings. People may be aware that, yeah, you see us come off a sideline at a game at a high school, a middle school, college, professional. That's probably the most common. But then we go so far above and beyond, doing things like Brandy is doing, even what I'm doing. I have kind of fallen into public safety as well. And so, Brandy, that may be new to you to hear that. So feel free to reach out. But I'm kind of the first athletic trainer hire within the company I work for within a hospital system who services nearly 300 agencies throughout Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois, police departments, fire departments, public safety agencies. And to do what I do, never in a million years thought I'd be doing it. Kind of fell into my lap, so I got very lucky. But yeah, it's certainly education. I think these type of presentations from Brandy, branching out, making sure that people understand what kind of settings that we work in, but try to make it very clear what is the common thread amongst all of those settings. Because I think one of the biggest things that can hurt us as a profession is getting so diverse and not having a consistent message as to what athletic trainers are, who we are, what we do, that we need to make sure we find that common characteristic between whether you're in a school setting, an occupational health setting, et cetera, and be very consistent in our message. So again, thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Clark. Thank you, Ryan, for everything that you guys have done and the meeting that we're having tonight.
thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
So we're right at an hour or 9 o'clock. Any other comments or questions from anybody? And I'm sure if something comes later, I mean, if you kick it out, Brandy, get the information into the IATA or whatever, or kick it to, my email is out there, etc. A question for Brandy, I'll make sure that she gets it. But if anybody has any questions for anybody, Justin with the IATA or with Ryan with COPA, myself, more questions for Brandy, please reach out to us.